The copyright of this file belongs to the Charlotte Mason Institute, Andra Smith and Danielle Sinceri, and it is for personal use only and may not be republished in any format without written permission from the copyright holders. The views in these files do not necessarily reflect the views of the copyright holders. The information provided is not intended to represent, be construed, or received as professional mental health advice. The copyright holders encourage everyone with mental health needs to work closely with a licensed provider that fits those needs.
We are glad that you are listening in today. Danielle and two other colleagues discuss the book they are reading entitled Neurotribes by Steve Silberman. Join Jennifer Swearingen, Molly Gribble, and Danielle as they share their thoughts and reactions to this book.
I am still working on Neurotribes, and I am loving it, although the chapters that I just finished were a little heavy, talking about eugenics and things like that. So, but it's a fascinating read. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
I bought it I borrowed it from the library, but I'm going to buy my own copy because I like it that much.
Yeah, he's a very good storyteller, isn't he?
He is.
So what do you want to kind of give us, like, main idea so far, or, you know, kind of the high points, or, you know, whatever you think is important?
Yeah. Well, when I picked it up, I mean, I don't know why I was kind of procrastinating picking it up. It just didn't sound like a book that was going to be engaging to me for some reason, but I knew it was important. I knew that you had said you liked it, and then Jay really highly recommended it. So I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I picked it up, and I remember when I read the introduction, I just had chills. It just really spoke to me because it started out with the author, and I think he was on maybe a cruise ship, or was at some kind of conference with a bunch of like technology geeks from Silicon Valley. And he was just noticing different things about them, noticing who's the man that did Pearl? Larry Well, is that right? He was one of them, and he wanted to do an interview with him, and he said he was open to doing a follow-up interview, but he wanted him to know we have an autistic daughter. And he starts seeing a pattern among these people from Silicon Valley that they later end up calling like an epidemic of autism, and oh my gosh, something's happening to our children, and it's horrible. And he was really intrigued, and he wanted to investigate what was going on in Silicon Valley and what was the syndrome that these children were suffering with. And just hearing the way that he described everybody, he just really, like you said, he's a great storyteller, and he really, I think, brings out the best in people. And it was amazing to me. I had never really considered, and I don't think he gets to this in the intro, in the beginning, when autism was first really being talked about, it was something we had to get rid of and stamp out and cure. And I like the way that he focuses on the people like Asperger and Sister Victorina that really sat with the children, interacted with the children, not on an artificial basis, not by conducting studies as we would think of such, but just by reading stories and reading his favorite poetry. Asperger would read his favorite poetry to the children, and just treating them like children that just needed to be nourished. And it reminded me so much of Charlotte Mason, the program that Sister Victorina put together. The schedule, the way she did it, I thought sounded, I don't know if she knew about Charlotte Mason, because by this time Charlotte Mason would have been dead, but maybe she was aware of her work. I'm not sure, but to read the schedule, it just made me smile. I was like, oh, that sounds like a Charlotte Mason education. And the children just really thrived with it. So to go from the introduction where he's like talking about, oh, I really want to investigate what's going on, what's happening. And then to go back in time, like to maybe the late 1700s with Henry Cavendish and Paul Dirac, I think was the other man's name, just to show that even though it's hard to trace the roots of autism, that it's not like a new phenomena. It's not something new. It's people. Imagine this, that God just creates certain people in a certain way, and we all have something worthwhile to contribute. And the only thing with people with autism is that sometimes the things that they really are challenges for them can kind of make them ostracized from the rest of society. And therefore they may not live up to that full potential that they could if they had the support from the community that could see the value that they're bringing to us, not just as a nation, obviously, but around the world. So it's absolutely amazing. I'm just really inspired by his storytelling. I'm inspired by the ideas. I just went into this not really knowing very much about autism, and I'm learning so much, and I'm excited about it because I have a nephew who's on the spectrum, and my son is not diagnosed, and he may or may not be on the spectrum, but he is different. And so just to read about the respect he has for different people as individuals, and to learn about these other individuals in history that had that same kind of respect and weren't just clinical, but really cared about these kids as individuals it's just really, I have chills just talking about it. It really inspires me to respect personhood. And I know that Charlotte Mason I think she would love this book.
Molly, have you read Neurotribes?
I have not. It sounds like something I would be interested in. My son is autistic. I have 4 kids, Jen. He is probably more how you would describe like Asperger's. They say all these different things, but that was the one thing before I went and got him evaluated. I was actually pretty deep into CPS by then, the collaboration bit. So when I went and got his evaluation, the way that the neuropsychologist talked about him was like such an affront to me, because I was so steeped in like personhood by then, and like kind of seeing things differently. I had already like had a lens change about it. Like we definitely were having issues, but it just was, that guy was so defensive when I brought up collaboration, and that this was literally the only thing that had worked with him. And because I was listening to him, I was learning about him, and I was listening to him, and it was just starting. But yeah, it was being viewed right away how I view my kid at all. And I was thankful to have come to that kind of prepared in a way. Otherwise, I mean, you could be completely blindsided by these people who, have their PhD, and they're doing this whole battery of tests on your kid and telling you need to put them into like dog training or whatever. It's just so true. Like we've seen a lot about ABA, whatever at all. So.
One thing that stood out to me about the example that you gave, Jennifer, about Cavendish and, some of the other people that he kind of sketches out, was that they were successful because they were able to kind of create their own environment and, make that fit for them. And Cavendish, by the way, when I read that book, it struck me so much because he reminds me of my dad. So it really, it was just tickled me to read the little scenes about Cavendish and to think about that, how and think about how many of the other kids that he talks about in there, were not given the opportunity or didn't have the circumstances that allowed them to create that environment for themselves.
Mm-hmm. His father definitely seemed really supportive of him, which I really appreciated. And I love how it went from the past right into the present with the Rosa family and talking about their journey and trying to find the right ways to help their son. And how in the beginning, she was really focused on curing her son. She wanted her son to go back to normal, to be back at normal. But at the end, she had decided to respect the personhood. And they, were living in a house that was very set up. The environment was friendly for him. And it was just amazing to me to read about all these other books that now I want to put on my reading list, the ones by Temple Grandin and who were the other ladies? I wrote them down, but to hear about this holding therapy, which sounded horrific, honestly, to hold a child, by force, and the ABA, and then the certain diet, the GFCF diet, I believe they called it, because I remember when there was like this big breakthrough with, breakthrough where the diet of autistic children could really help alleviate some of the ones maybe who weren't verbal, or it could really help them and help make them more verbal. And I'm not saying there's nothing to that. I don't really know, but I know it was a hard change for the Rosa family because his diet basically he had changed completely. It was a 180. But she felt sad for him because he seemed like he was cooperating, but just not thriving. So it was exciting to see the evolution of their journey from please just fix my son to respecting who God made him to be. And I liked how they did it from the past and the present. They're showing pictures of all different time periods and kind of not in necessarily a linear way, but showing how far autism has really come since it became a household word. So I'm excited. I am eager to read the rest of it. And I want to highlight, that's why I want to get my own copy, because I'm like, I'm going to highlight certain parts of it. It's a library book. I can't, but I am very, very pleasantly surprised because I just thought it would be a book that I knew I wanted to get through. I knew it was important, but I didn't expect to enjoy reading it this much. And get a whole bunch of other books that I wanted to read it as a result of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I've bought that book for several people. And I kind of at the same time, it's the same as you. I was a little bit intimidated with it at first, but then once I started reading it, I could not put the thing down. I'm going to get it. I'm writing it. It was almost like Harry Potter. Like Jay was like, are you still reading that book? Like, can you talk to me for a minute? Like, no, it's really good.
Go away. Go make the kids dinner. I'm busy. Oh, goodness.
What other, you mentioned a book by Temple Grandin that you wanted to follow up on. That was one of the questions I had for you. What other things is this stirring up for you? Like that you want to jump off and, learn about other things?
Okay. I've seen the movie on Temple Grandin a couple times, which I did find very inspirational. And so her book, I think, is Thinking in Pictures. So I'm interested in that. I'm interested in Oliver Sacks.
Oh yeah, the man who mistook his wife for a hat.
Say it again.
He wrote this book. He wrote another book. I'm sure it's not the one you're saying, but it's The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
Oh, what a fascinating,
very interesting book, actually.
Yeah, he sounded like a really interesting author. I've heard he's also a good storyteller.
Yeah, he is.
Yes,
I've read a couple.
Very.
Let's see, Clara Claiborne Parks, The Siege. The book that they mentioned in this book by Oliver Sacks is An Anthropologist on Mars. So
that one.
These were the three that I was interested in pursuing next. I'm looking up at my notes from the intro too, and I'm remembering I found it so interesting that, you know, when you think about the autistic community at large, you think of loners. And his description in the intro was so fascinating to me, that these people did do their work alone. They thrived, you know, in solitude and enjoyed working by themselves, but they also really liked being around other people who had the same way of thinking that they did. They really, he called them a convivial society of loners. And I thought, oh, what a cool picture of a learning community. You know, all education is self-education, educating themselves, coming together and sharing their findings. And I think it was Temple Grandin also that said, a lot of times autistic people do better married to other autistic people, or at least other eccentric people. I don't know how she came to that conclusion, but it seems to make sense.
I think there's data on that. Sarah Hendricks, I know, has mentioned the same thing, that even if they're not, you know, diagnosed or don't know before they're married, we seem to find each other like magnets.
Right. Absolutely. Because you're on the same page. Who doesn't want, you know, to spend the rest of their life with somebody who's on the same page as they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I've been thinking about this a little bit with my kids and like who they kind of are drawn to. And I find that's very true. Even the siblings, like
Molly, we're losing your connection.
my little girl, she's neurotypical, but she tends to draw people, like autistic people too. Like we've had stuff. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, now
You
we can.
It's frozen, but we can hear you. Okay, now it's not.
But I think she just has a way with autistic people now because she's like been around her brother forever. And so she's had several friends. And I just find it interesting. I've put them into rock climbing together. And that's kind of a sport that I feel like draws more eccentric people because it's it can be very intensive, but it's also very like personal driven. It's more individual. So it's been really interesting to see the kids in that group. And I was right. Like there's a lot of kids who are just, you know, they're just a little different. And my kids feel more comfortable for sure in that group of kids.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Tony Atwood has noticed the same kind of thing, Molly, and he refers to those, like the kids who are not autistic, or the people who are not autistic, but they grew up with somebody in their family who was. And so he was in that situation. He says that we're like the translators. So we can speak Aspergerese and regular
Exactly. Like
neurotypical speak.
Even though my family wasn't like that, because I worked at Easter Seals like when I was in high school. That's my first job. And I spent like a ton of time with a few different people. And I'm sure that they were autistic, but they were just diagnosed with like, you know, pervasive developmental stuff. You know how they diagnosed everybody like that, because this was back like in the late 90s. And so I kind of just like, I don't know, it's just kind of natural to me, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Jen?
I think, I mean, this does not go along with the book, especially. I just noticed that when I was in college, they really needed special education teachers, but I didn't think that was my calling. And now I look back and I know hindsight's 20/20, but I missed it. I love working with special needs kids, whether they are on the spectrum or there's something else that is going on with them. There's something about special needs kids that makes them, it's just a different plane than your neurotypical children that are, I guess I should say, maybe going through the public school system. I find it really interesting that my older kids are in their 20s. And when the older kids were in the 20s and they would hang around with their public school counterparts, it wasn't a problem. But I notice now with my youngest, who is, he's special needs, but so are his siblings. But the youngest one, who there's a big 8-year gap, And when he tries to intermingle with the public school age kids, and that's just who we have. It could be with private school too, but I just noticed a huge discrepancy in their ability to interact well together. And I don't know if that's because society has changed, the public school has changed. I'm not sure what's fueling that, but it makes me realize how much the children that I adore being around all have something that makes them neuroatypical. And I'm super excited to be part of such a neurodiverse and amazing community. And this book just makes me happy. So I'm excited. I would recommend it to anybody.
I wonder if some of that is like how quick things have gotten, like I feel like, and I'm not making a fair comparison because I grew up more in a rural location where maybe things were slower anyway. But I feel like at least where we are now, it's like, it's so like transient, and the kids just don't necessarily just go play with the kids next door all afternoon, right? It's go from one place to the next and place to the next, and you either make a connection or you're gone. And I feel like a lot of our kids need a little bit more time.
Yes, that's a great point.
Yeah, Sam does better just with like a couple of friends, that he knows really well. But when it gets into those situations, like he was in day camp this summer with a lot of different kids, and that was just a lot for him to handle. All those other kids, and they're mostly from just going to regular school, public or private. But there was a few kids in the group that were homeschooled, and they all kind of hung together. And I was impressed by the fact that like they were kind and like stood up for each other, because there was some like bullying and stuff going on. They seemed to be more like less group thinky and more like, I don't know, just positive and supporting each other kind of friendships. And I wonder if that is a difference with being at school, because there's just so much of that group mindset and protecting yourself all the time that I think goes on at school.
Thank you for joining us today. We will see you on 7 February 2022. We hope that everyone has a safe, happy, and meaningful holiday season, and we wish you the very best for a safe and happy New Year in 2022. See you soon.